This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Jen, hello!
That's more Mrs. Doubtfire than it is Royals, but that might have given you a clue regarding what we're talking about today, which is, why do we still care about the royal family? I don't understand this.
Okay. After
Explain yourself.
This, I would say I'm on the fringe, like, I'm interested. I follow it. Okay. I'm not obsessed.
Okay.
I'm very well aware of the history.
Yes.
We'll figure out where my alignment with this is.
Okay.
But I'm definitely not, like, obsessed.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can decide.
Did you watch the weddings?
I did watch the when Prince William and Kate Middleton got married. That was it.
So you didn't watch Harry and Meghan? Yeah. I actually watched some of that, and that was probably the most the least pretentious, I think, because she's a commoner.
Yeah. Well, I loved her show.
Yeah. Oh, I never watched it. Suits, right? Okay. Yeah, I never saw Suits.
I like her.
Yeah, I like her as well.
And I figured that was probably not going to be a marriage that was going to go very well in the royal family.
Yeah. Well, so, it went okay for them.
For them, I'm very happy
love is
for
so
them.
strong.
Yes,
so we're going to get into that because it's a big sticking point, I think, for me in particular, as to why people still, hold these people on a pedestal. And when I think that terrible things are happening and these vestiges of colonialism and racism are still rearing their ugly heads.
Post-pandemic, if you're this is Carolyn saying her I statement. If you're still liking and admiring a lot of the same things, you might want to check yourself.
Yeah, no. Right? When you know more, you got to do better, right? Yeah. So, the royal family, people are absolutely obsessed. Yes. Obsessed. It's insane. And, I think this is not just a British phenomenon, but no, don't worry about it. Honey, don't worry. So, we're not going to edit this. My child's in here with me. I've had my child with me all week because it was spring break and we decided not to put him in a camp. And now it is Saturday and my husband is off golfing. I'm not going to condemn him too badly, but I didn't feel right about leaving my child to his own devices upstairs to stare at an iPad for an hour while Carolyn and I recorded. Yeah, so he's here with his iPad and his earphones. But
earmuffs,
earmuffs.
So you won't hear us swearing.
He won't hear us swearing, but he always hears me swearing. So it's not really a big deal. But some clothes fell on the ground, some clothes that I intend to try to sell to Crossroads. And he wanted to alert me to the fact that they fell on the ground because he's a very good boy. But he's not going to say anything else, I hope. Anyway, so let's get back to the royal family.
Yay.
Let's not talk about my family. Let's talk about the royal family. Because nobody's fascinated with my family.
I'm fascinated with your family.
It is interesting. It's kind of like watching the Osbournes, except we're not famous or British. But there is a lot of profanity. Sharon! Okay, back to the British family we came here to talk about. So, yeah, I don't give a shit about the nonsense and the obsession. Carolyn has said she kind of cares a bit. So tell me a little bit more about why you care even a tiny bit. Because my perception is we want a war.
Yeah.
So, not give a shit about these people. Yeah. Why do we still?
Yeah. Well, okay, and I want to preface this with, I'm into a lot of monarchies. It's not just British royalty. I find, again, we know from previous episodes, I like princesses and Disney. So, that whole idea is very interesting to me. Yeah. Because of the fantasy of it. Okay. And the fact that, there's still palaces and, things like that. To me, that's the part that's fascinating. So definitely the pop culture of it. But for some reason, my family growing up, we had a very well, my dad loved Monty Python, so it's not odd.
I do too.
My parents loved British comedy.
Yeah.
And so I grew up watching a lot of British BBC and KQED. Yes. And, you know, this is so weird, but my dad, who was a hoarder / collector, had this tea set. And according to him, it's a tea set that like only 10 families have in the whole wide world. And the Queen of England also had it.
Very cool.
And we used to laugh because we'd be like, we tell people that. And I was like, is that even true? My mom was like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And with my dad, it may have well been true. Right. All I know is that was one thing I did want her to keep, and she threw that away.
God damn it.
But anyway, so
should have been on Antiques Roadshow.
It was a beautiful tea set too.
Oh.
But truthfully, the real reason was my mom loved the Ark of Diana.
Oh yeah.
And my mom really felt a connection as a woman to Diana's story.
That makes sense.
And felt there were a lot of parallels with Diana's life and my mom's life and Diana's marriage and my mom's marriage. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And so my mom was pregnant with me at the same time William was born. So she just really loved Princess Di. Yeah. So I think it's more of a Princess Diana.
I get that.
Fascination, and then the royal families in it. I also love history.
Okay.
So like ancient, like, or I was into like what
Egypt and stuff.
And just, you know, any types of, you know, the Romanov family. Like, I love history. I love anything related to monarchies.
That makes sense.
That sense. I'm not like into the British family, but like, I don't know. I think it's interesting. But yeah, so I think it was more really a Princess Diana thing, and I think we really fell in love with her. Like, I wrote an autobiography on her.
People's princess.
She was the people's princess.
I adore her. Like, I can barely talk about her without getting teared up because she was such a wonderful person and what she did to bring awareness to AIDS and how she was so unafraid in a time where people didn't necessarily know how it spread and there was this fear of even touching someone with AIDS, and she's going to the hospitals and she's holding babies who have AIDS and
what the royal family did to her and what the royal family has done is not good. We'll get there.
Yeah, we absolutely will.
Also, I had a big crush on Prince William.
Oh, on Prince William?
Big time.
Yeah.
Big
I know. Everybody did. And now Harry's the hot one.
I liked Harry too, but we were the same age and like both like the Spice Girls. Okay. He liked Baby Spice. I know.
Harry was hot until he wore that Nazi uniform.
Oopsies.
God damn it,
well,
Harry.
They say he's not a Windsor, that he's supposedly one of Diana's there's
like an infidelity thing?
Yeah.
I think that's bullshit. People want to disparage her for some reason. I think because she's an amazing person. Or was an amazing person. And that I think shows how nasty people could be, that they'd want to disparage somebody that pure and that wonderful.
It's the best.
So yeah, I have nothing bad to say about her. So let's get into a little history here. And obviously this history goes back centuries. So we're going to focus solely on the current royal family, aka the House of Windsor. Now I got this information from Town and Country. Woo-hoo! So the House of Windsor, as we know it today, began in 1917 when the family changed its name from the German Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. That actually sounds badass. I'd rather be Saxe-Coburg-Gotha in the wake of the First World War. Now King Charles
rebranding for marketing.
Right.
Ironically, actually.
Windsor. It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
So King Charles's great-grandfather, King George V, was the first Windsor monarch, and today's working royals are the descendants of King George and his wife, Queen Mary. The grandson of Queen Victoria and great-grandfather to King Charles III. Try to follow along, folks, because I certainly can't, and I'm reading the shit. George V was born third in the line of succession and did not expect to become king. That changed after his elder brother, Prince Albert Victor, died in 1892.
So did you see, what's the one with Colin Firth where he has to give the speech?
The King's Speech.
The King's Speech. I did. That's King George.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So he had a speech impediment.
Yeah.
And was very nervous about having to speak in public. And it shouldn't have gone to him, but it did.
Okay. Was Albert the one where it's unclear what killed him. Some people, well, From Hell, that movie about Jack the Ripper, which has a lot of historical fallacies in it, basically says that he got chlamydia. And that could have been it. Or
STDs. Well, I think back then, like if you had cancer and STD, they didn't say.
They said it was the flu.
A lot of inbreeding too that went on within the royals.
The Habsburg chin. Oh my God.
A hemophilia in the Romanov family. Yeah. So
this is what happens when you inbreed, y'all. So King Charles's great grandmother, Queen Mary, was royal by birth. Her great grandfather was King George III, despite technically being a princess of the German Duchy of Teck. Oh no. She was born and raised in England. She was first engaged to marry Prince Albert Victor, the one that died, the eldest son, and then ended up with George because guy died. And, that's how it goes. You don't get to pick who you marry. It's like, oh, this one died. Now you get to marry this one.
Yeah.
Awesome. The runner-up. So the eldest son of George V and Queen Mary, Edward, became king after his father's death in 1936. But threw the country into crisis months later when he proposed to Wallis Simpson. Although I did read that she could have been a Nazi sympathizer. I don't know how much about that's true. But anyway.
And there's a lot of letters that he wrote back and forth with the Nazi party that they later found when they went through his house, and Windsors covered that up. But there was and even when, I do know a lot about it, but it's like history shit.
Yeah.
But they didn't want Elizabeth to marry her husband, Prince Philip, because of his connection. There was a lot of weird shit about, he's connected to Austria.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, it didn't make sense. It's like, but you're German descendants.
Yeah. Oh, it's so weird. So it's fascinating stuff. It really is fascinating. And I understand the fascination with the history component of it, not the salacious tabloid bullshit, which seems to be most people's focus these days. So
I'm not into that.
This Wallis Simpson person, she was actually an American divorcee. So unable to marry Simpson and remain on the throne, he actually abdicated the throne in 1936, which I think is kind of cool, unless they're Nazi sympathizers. And it was because nothing good should happen to Nazi sympathizers. And it was succeeded by his younger brother, Albert, Queen Elizabeth's father, who would go on to become King George VI. So the only daughter of George V and Queen Mary. During World War I, Mary devoted herself to charity work, sound familiar, visiting hospitals and launching fundraising campaigns to support British soldiers and sailors. She later trained as a nurse and worked 2 days a week at the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London. This sounds so much like Diana. In 1922, Mary married Viscount Lascelles, who later became Earl of Harewood. Earl of Hair Pie. Theirs was the first royal wedding to receive coverage in fashion magazines like Vogue. So this is where it starts to become a little more, salacious, whatever. Those fans of, is it Downton Abbey?
Downton Abbey.
Yeah, will recognize Mary from her part in the plot. Another thing I didn't watch because fuck a period piece.
I love Downton Abbey.
I bet you did. So we're going to skip all the way ahead to the Queen Elizabeth that we knew, who passed recently.
Lily.
Yes. So from 1900 to 2002, Elizabeth ascended to the throne and she became known as the Queen Mother. She remained active in public life even after her 100th birthday in 2000 and died at 101. So then Charles, he's the current king of the UK and head of the Commonwealth. His children. We've got, what are they?
No, that can't be right. She just died.
She did just die. So this, I don't know.
They might mean her. They're thinking of her mom.
Her mom. Yeah, that's right.
She was Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But then there was.
See, there's too many fucking Elizabeths and Charles and Georges. I can't keep track of all these white people.
I think I might have messed something up too with the King's speech. It's further down.
I need a white people Rolodex. So we all know, King Charles married Princess Di, was cheating on her the entire time with Camilla Parker Bowles, whatever her name is.
Well, he wanted to marry Camilla, and the royal family wouldn't let him.
They just should have.
Let it go, and that ruined everything for everyone.
God damn it. So, their kids, Princess Di and Charles. We've got William and we've got Harry. We talked about them, and we know who they're married to, right? William's married to Kate Middleton, who is she a duchess?
Yes.
Okay, she's a duchess, and then Harry married a commoner, Meghan Markle, whom we all know and love. So that's where we are at right now. And Harry is currently 5th in line of succession. I think is William first in line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So, oh my God, if you look at the succession map, it's fucking
crazy.
Nuts. And I think what's his face was in there until recently. Andrew.
Oh God, what a waste of
The guy
space.
who was tied up with Epstein for, I don't know, pedophilia.
Yeah, just
awesome.
a little.
Yeah, awesome. So this is what I don't understand. Okay, I can kind of understand why Brits are obsessed with this stuff.
Sure.
This is their country.
Sure.
But the American obsession, I don't understand. So the Associated Press tried to explain it to me. And they gave a couple of reasons. Number one is, who doesn't love a good fairy tale? This is Carolyn's reason.
Yes.
Kings and queens, princesses and princes, they're mainstays of fairy tales and other
Coronation
stories.
days.
Yay, of imagination and play.
Yeah.
The references for power and prestige, and we use those terms in our our celebrity culture, right? Like Aretha Franklin, she was the queen of soul, and then John F. Kennedy and his family, it was Camelot.
Oh yeah.
And so
on the outside.
yeah, exactly. Again, a lot of these things look real pretty from the outside,
Yes.
and on the inside, they're all corroded and fucked up. So,
Yes.
reason 2, the U.S. and the U.K. have always been connected. All right. Well, kings and queens might always be of some interest. There's no denying that the residents of Buckingham Palace hold a special place for Americans, given our history.
Well, and I was reading something in the research of doing this where that was sort of a newer thing that happened once America joined into world wars.
That makes sense.
And that England became an ally.
Yeah.
But there was something about a Irish, I think what the name in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago, big something. I can't remember the name.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, if the King of England ever came here, I would punch him in the face.
Awesome.
And that won him the political election.
Yeah.
Because he was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
British were terrible to the Irish.
Right.
We hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we need to go back to that. No, we don't have to hate all Brits. I love the Brits, but I love the Irish more. Just going to put that out there. So reason number 3, the cult of celebrity.
Yeah.
America loves and sometimes loves to hate celebrities. This we know. And in this modern era of ubiquitous social media and technology, when there's an impulse to make people famous for even the dumbest reasons, like reality TV, having a royal title means it's not inescapable.
Mm-hmm.
It's all been inescapable, rather, the focus. And so this is from the New Yorker. I thought this was really fascinating. The public value the escapism of their imagined lives. Imagined, that's the key. Filled with bee venom face masks. I want that. Private yoga studios. Also want that. Priceless baubles. That would be cool. And ostentatious homes. Also awesome.
Yes.
They have all that wealth hidden just out of sight. Kind of, which makes for fun speculation, the lifeblood of celebrity magazine. So, okay, whatever. Carolyn, from a psych perspective, can you break down this friggin' royal obsession for us?
I absolutely can. And this comes from a 2018 Time magazine article by Jamie Duchamp. And I've actually seen this guy quoted, Dr. Frank Farley, in a couple different things about America's obsession with the royal family. So I don't know if he's like some big...
He's a premier expert.
He's a professor and psychologist at Temple University and former American Psychological Association president.
Oh, he's got some notoriety.
All right, whatever.
Yeah.
But he talks about how, famous media figures, people we learn about, celebrities, etc., we often live our lives through them.
Okay.
But it's, like you said, it's a fantasy, and humans are social animals. So he calls this something that I've never heard of. He says it falls under the label of parasocial behavior, which can create a one-sided relationship in which someone becomes attached to a person without actually interacting with them in a meaningful way. I think I've had parasocial dating.
Well, all I can think about is like when this becomes obsessive, like the dude who shot or tried to shoot Ronald Reagan for Jodie Foster. I'm like,
we're going to get there, Jen. This is not a good thing.
Yeah, let's get on this dark road, baby.
So again, this one-sided relationship, the parasocial behavior could include being emotionally invested in your favorite television, sports team, vampire show.
Yeah! I'm parasocial for you, Damon.
But you've met him and you've interacted with him. It's not really fake.
Now we're BFFs. I know where you live.
But even within that, like you like the fantasy of that escape from reality.
Sure.
So that I think we can all align to.
Yeah.
Celebrities in particular capture this attention because they illustrate things we've been taught to covet, but it's subconsciously. We've been taught to covet and also like not want these things. So when we see someone flaunting it, here's the thing that would get me, like, kind of with the Diana, that's when the media, like, what was that show, Paparazzi?
Oh, okay.
Did you ever see that
I never
movie?
watched it, but I'm familiar.
Tom Sizemore is a fucking asshole in that. Well, he is an asshole, but sorry, rest in peace. But
is he dead?
Isn't he?
I don't know.
You know who I thought was dead?
Keep talking.
I thought Dave Attell was dead, and then he has a Netflix comedy.
What did you think he was dead?
Yeah, I thought he was dead.
What the fuck?
I know, news.
He's not even like, he doesn't even have an addiction that I'm aware of.
Really? He just fell off the face of the earth.
No, and Tom Sizemore's not fucking, wait, oh yeah, he is dead.
Okay.
Never mind, you're right about that.
He's a weird one.
R.I.P.
Anyway, so constant media exposure in that feedback loop. So, okay, prior, like you were talking about fashion, and this is where we would, you know, you'd film people, you would have them in the public eye, and there's sort of that fascination and that living vicariously through them. Now it's so constant, and people are so interested because these media outlets keep hovering over them.
Yeah.
And they're constantly in the media cycle. So to me now it's kind of obnoxious, but this I thought was even more interesting. Lynn McCutcheon, editor of the North American Journal of Psychology, began researching this phenomenon of parasocial behavior in 2001. She's done over 50 studies dedicated to this topic, and she wrote a paper on celebrity worship published in 2002 in the British Journal of Psychology. I'm sorry, Lynn is a man. He and his colleagues sorted fans into 4 categories based on the 23-point celebrity attitude scale. I've got to find the scale.
What is this?
Well, anyway, so the top ones, and it goes from like kind of mild to like full-blown fucking obsession.
Sweet.
The first category of celebrity worship is when you just turn the activity into social pursuit. Right? You're just sharing it, discussing it. I would say that's what I have.
Okay.
Right? It's not too creepy, right?
Right.
They say it's, Lynn says it's harmless. So
Thanks,
most
Lynn.
people say that we call that celebrity worship. It never gets beyond that, right?
Okay.
All right. The second category is people become obsessed with a particular person or begin to believe they're soulmates or have a close personal relationship. Jen and Damon.
Yeah.
And the third category. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
You like the actual real person. That's a step up.
I like the real person.
Yeah. And you actually do. You support him very well.
Wonderful human being who does wonderful things for the environment and other human beings. Anyway, I digress. Don't give me the opportunity to speak well of Ian Somerhalder, because I will turn this entire episode into Ian worship. Anyway.
So that's where we're getting a little bit more obsessive. And the third category is the rarest and most dangerous. And this is where you're probably, the fourth category, they don't actually say in the article, but my assumption would be when you actually act on this.
Yeah.
But they may even perform extreme behavior such as stalking. So we have that spectrum, and the media again makes this worse. Certain traits, though, predispose people to higher likelihoods of celebrity worship or royal worship. So if you tend to run more anxious or have irresponsibility or difficulty forming close relationships, you're more likely, that makes sense, to sort of have that fantasy about someone else. Now, he said this loneliness and lower intelligence may also be related. I don't know if I like lower intelligence.
Okay.
That kind of bums me out. But anyway, I definitely think loneliness can make us do some pretty interesting things. And if you're an addict, you're also more likely to be addicted to these types of things.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, thank you for that. That was enlightening. And, while they may be treated like celebrities, most celebrities don't have this, here's where it's going to get real dark, a legacy of violent colonialism and murder. This is what bothers me. So, I don't feel like we can take a really critical look at the royal family without talking about this.
Absolutely.
And anyone who says that it's no longer relevant and we shouldn't be judging these people by, crimes of the past, we're going to tie it all up for you in a neat little bow so you can see how it's still very much alive. And I think one person's name will sum it all up, and that's Meghan Markle. So we're going to come full circle and talk about poor Meghan too. Okay, so let's talk about the British Empire's colonial hits, shall we? So this is from an article entitled How British Colonialism Killed 100 Million Indians in 40 Years. Because if you don't know, India was a colony of Britain. This is what Gandhi was fighting against, British oppression and control. So according to research by the economic historian Robert C. Allen, extreme poverty in India increased under British rule from 23% in 1810 to more than 50% in the mid-20th century. Real wages declined during the British colonial period, reaching a nadir in the 19th century. I don't know what that means.
That must be something really bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
We've reached a nadir point.
I don't know what that is, and I feel like a moron. So while famines became more frequent and more deadly, so from far...
A nadir is the lowest point in fortunes of a person or an organization.
Thank you. Okay, so they reached nadir status under British rule. Famines became more frequent and deadly. Far from benefiting the Indian people, colonialism was a human tragedy with few parallels in recorded history. Now, while the precise number of deaths is sensitive to the assumption we make about baseline mortality, it is clear that somewhere in the vicinity of 100 million people died prematurely at the height of British colonialism. This is among the largest policy-induced mortality crisis in human history. It is larger than the combined number of deaths that occurred during all famines in the Soviet Union, Maoist China, North Korea, Pol Pot's Cambodia, and oh God, I can't say Mengistu's Ethiopia. We know terrible shit happened in Ethiopia. So loss of life associated with Britain effectively destroyed India's manufacturing sector. So this is what kind of culminated in this tremendous loss of wealth and subsequently life. Prior to colonialization, India was one of the largest industrial producers in the world, exporting high-quality textiles to all corners of the globe. Yep. Now, I'm not going to go into the technicalities of trade and tariffs that crippled the Indian economy. I'm not smart enough, but I do encourage you to read the article that we linked in our notes. So needless to say, colonial administrators were fully aware of the consequences of their policies. They were deliberate. Make no mistake. They watched as millions starved, and yet they did not change course. Watch Gandhi. Watch the movie. Yeah. It's amazing for a reason.
Golden glory.
Yeah. It really, I think, demonstrates how intentional all of these things were under British rule. And, they continue to do this, knowingly depriving people of resources necessary for survival. There's a good article from Martin Greenwood, and he says, students across the United Kingdom have been failed by their educational system. False accounts of the role Britain played regarding colonization not only mislead students, but supplies them with a false sense of pride.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. No wonder we're so closely connected. This filter on reality may then be applied to view topics concerning race, discrimination, and equality in their adulthood. So let's go on let's unpack this a little more, like we'd say in grad school, shall we?
I honor that.
Do you honor it? A 2014 YouGov poll revealed that 59% of British people view the British Empire as something to be proud of. And then they did another poll, a YouGov poll from 2 years ago, which found that still we're making progress, but 32% of people still are actively proud of the nation's colonial history.
Age poll on that was.
I'm fascinated. I can't disaggregate the information. All I have is that, eventual number they got to. So I think, again, this sounds familiar. Now, this is from a Guardian article. A couple of years ago, the UK conducted the biggest and most comprehensive survey of race and equality in the UK for more than a quarter of a century. Nearly a third of people from ethnic and religious minority groups reported racial discrimination in education, so 29%, and employment, 29%, and nearly a fifth said they experienced discrimination when looking for housing. So more than a fifth of all minorities reported experience of discrimination from the police, though this rose to 43% of Black Caribbean groups and more than a third of, they say, gypsies, traveler and Roma groups. So ethnic minority groups were more likely to live in overcrowded housing. 60% of Roma families were overcrowded, and a quarter of Pakistani and Arab people, and far more likely than white British people to be without access to outdoor space at home. All of this sounds terribly familiar.
Yes, it does.
So let's talk about Meghan. And I feel terrible for Meghan. This is from a Time article. So there was one clear thread throughout, if you watch the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry interview with Oprah. And that thread is they, being Meghan and Harry, believe they were driven from the royal family because of racism. it was explicit and perhaps the most shocking allegation that a member of the royal family came to Harry while Markle was pregnant with their son Archie with concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he was born. I don't know why Harry or Meghan would lie about something like this. I firmly believe them. I have absolutely no reason not to. And also from the Oprah interview, Harry talked about his frustration from the lack of support from his family in the face of racist attacks on Markle. He said, for this union and the specifics around her race, there was many opportunities for my family to show some public support. And I guess one of the most telling parts and the saddest parts, was over 70 female members of parliament, both Conservative and Labour, came out and called out the colonial undertones of articles and headlines written about Meghan. Yet no one from my family ever said anything, and that hurts. I don't even know where to go with this. One of my moms is married to a black man, and they've been together for 40 years and have experienced some shit. And my mom has sat there and told me, like shitting on Meghan Markle. She knew what she was getting into, wouldn't even necessarily entertain the racist stuff in spite of her lived experience being married to a black man. I'm like, what is going on? I was flabbergasted by it. Never really got to the bottom of why she felt that way. But, I have no idea.
Well, it's that thing where you think that, and this is such a white person stance, well, that was in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not.
And it's funny because I didn't go and talk to my mom's husband about it. I didn't talk to Carlton about it. And had I talked to Carlton, I bet you I would have gotten a completely different perspective. Because he's often said to my mom, you don't get it. Yeah. And that just goes to show you the person you love the most on the planet could be a person of color and you still don't get it. And of course, us white people can never get it because it's not happening to us. Yes. But we can be allies and empathetic and honor somebody's experience. If somebody's telling me I have experienced racism, who the fuck am I to say, you're playing the race card, or, oh, that never happened to you, or I didn't see that. Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, I'm getting hot in here. Get hot.
It's okay. It traumas. I don't, it is totally bizarre, Jen. And when you think about it, we are basically when you admire the royal family, you're admiring oppressors. And I think, it's pretty fucked up that we still have a Columbus Day, even though I think they call it Indigenous people, but they do here Columbus Day parades in America. And I think it's not happening anywhere near at the rate it could be and should be happening. But I think when you realize you've made an error, change it. Yeah. Do something different. Right. And we're just so civilly split. And I think I would feel the same way but if you're not being taught in schools, I grew up singing about Christopher Columbus and he was a great explorer and all these things. We were building missions out of fucking popsicle sticks. And then you find out there were places of murder and oppression of indigenous people. Yeah. Not interested. So, any honoring of horrific genocidal murder and raping, and that's what colonialism is. Right. That is what and how apropos that America, which comes from Britain, is no different. We just don't call it a monarchy. Right? Well, we immediately went and implemented an economic system predicated on free and forced labor. Yes. We didn't learn shit. And we're still celebrating Independence Day. Well, I think the founding of our country is something that we can be proud of, but I think that we still simultaneously need to acknowledge our dark past, and most countries have a dark past because I feel like the human experience, unfortunately, coincides with power and oppression, but we have to do better. Yes. We're evolved. We are animals, but we also have big fucking brains and the capability to think and reflect and change our behavior. Well, and I think that's the problem that people have with the royal family in general is that it's the power of whitewashing, literally. And the royal family throughout history has done egregious things, not just in racism and in colonialism, but in mental health. Yeah. Did you know that 2 of the cousins of the royal family were put into asylums? No. And left there for years? I just deleted the article. Damn it. Oh, no, I didn't. The Queen's cousins, Catherine and Nerissa Bowes Lyon, Bose lion, who each had a mental age of about 3 years old and never talk in their lifetime. They were sent to live in, and they do talk about this in The Crown.
Yeah.
But they were sent to live in an asylum and never got anything. And
it's like Rose Kennedy.
Yeah.
Except I don't think she was just wild. And they're like, no, you're making us look bad. Let's lobotomize you and put you into an asylum. I don't know if they lobotomized her, but anyway.
Well, and the more you learn about the history, the more you learn about this whitewashing and the horror that has built America and the horror that the British colonialism did to many small nations and many large nations and people and cultures. And what's strange to me is the silence, the denial, and this sort of, even in The Crown, like I had to actually stop watching The Crown because I found that show, the way they were doing it, I didn't like it. And I hate that you didn't watch it because your husband would like it. Yeah. Well, I didn't like how they were portraying some things, and they just really make it seem like we had no idea, or we didn't know, or that's not for us to worry about. We're just the royal family.
Oh boy, yeah.
And that doesn't, it doesn't look good.
No.
And like I said, in kindergarten, I made up a rumor that the middle bathroom toilet had AIDS. Like, I don't know where I heard that, but
it's awful, but you were also 5.
I was 5.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't do that now. And if I could go back and tell all the people who sat on that toilet that they don't have cooties, but that was cootie time. But right?
It's AIDS.
AIDS. I was aware of at the time.
Well,
AIDS.
yeah, I mean, and that's a child's mind, right? We grew up in the 80s where the AIDS pandemic was, fully took hold. So we were hearing the news that our parents were watching and, adapting it in a way that was juvenile and fucking ridiculous because we were juvenile and ridiculous.
Well, that's the difference.
Yes.
I find what's strange is this denial. It's almost like it's even worse to me than doubling down.
Yes.
Like, I would actually prefer, and I often think this, like, if that's what you truly believe, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I know. Thank you, Dave Chappelle. Now I know who you are.
Yep.
I know what you're about, and now I can choose not to support you.
That's right.
But it's this like, no, wasn't us, and this denial or the cognitive dissonance, the secrets. I don't do very well with secrets, not just because I'm a therapist. I can't even keep secrets.
Right.
But this psychological defense we use at times to reduce our anxiety when we feel something's particularly disturbing. That's what denial is, right? I'm not going to deal with this, so I'll just push that aside because it's actually worse to actually feel what I have to feel. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just bred from generations of thinking they don't have to. I think there's probably a very good sense that she didn't know. She was just a child, Queen Elizabeth, when she took over and was having to do a lot of this stuff. But again, once you do know, and I think that's what's frustrating is that when we witness and we see seemingly intelligent adults vehemently denying truths despite irrefutable data, history, documentation. That's what I don't understand. And I think that's what's, this is just problematic.
It is incredibly problematic. And also goes back to, and with just a regular ass family, you see this, but imagine all of the pomp and circumstance and expectations and entitlement that coincides with being royal. This is what you've been told is not only normal, but expected.
Yes.
And so you propagate and, perpetuate these terrible ideas.
Yes.
And to deviate puts you in the position that Meghan and Harry are currently in.
Which is ridiculous because in my mind, if you deviate, you're going to be, I think that's better. But that's my belief system. Right. Right?
Yep.
That'd be no different than any, whenever we can change our minds about something.
Yeah.
Hey, I messed up.
Yeah.
That was wrong and here's how I'm going to make it right.
Yeah.
What is that? That's call-in culture, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if within the royal family, again, and when you think, again, my specialty is Princess Diana, but, you look at that example and she was deviating from what was expected.
Yeah.
And I think when you watch The Crown, you see this difference that something that made sense back then just doesn't make sense anymore.
Right.
It hasn't aged well.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think you're right. You try to, there's no justifying this. But anyway, I also want to spend some time talking about the right to privacy, ? Like, do the royals have a right to privacy?
They think they do.
Well, yeah, and we know we've been beating up on them quite a bit in this episode. But that said, I firmly believe, and Carolyn, I don't know if you believe similarly, that everyone has a right to privacy.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't seem to apply to the royals. And
a lot of celebrities.
Yeah, we cry foul on this. I mean, celebrities tend to have a bit more privacy, right? There aren't people outside of their houses all the time usually stalking them, whereas there is probably people outside of Buckingham Palace all the goddamn time.
All the time.
And from a legal perspective, the British courts have ruled that everyone, the royal family included, is entitled to a right to privacy. The Human Rights Act incorporates into British law the rights set out by the European Convention on Human Rights. And this is from an Express UK article, though. So this is fascinating. There seem to be two schools of thought when it comes to the monarchy and privacy. The first one being that the members of the royal family don't have the right to privacy as they are public servants, and the second being that they are still human beings. So this is from a Euronews article. This is fascinating. The very act of existing within the royal family is one that forgoes your right to complete privacy. You can exist in an ordinary family, get a job, a mortgage, and one day retire all away from the limelight, or you can exist within a hereditary monarchy whose power over the nation is still imbued by divine right. Fascinating. In modern day terms, I think that means your medical records should be available to anyone willing to send a freedom of information request. Fuck and that. And we just saw that with poor Kate Middleton.
That was terrible.
Trying to recover from first abdominal surgery. And then we find out the poor woman has cancer. I'm like,
leave her alone.
Just leave her alone. And so speculating. Yeah. It's disgusting.
That
like hashtag where's Kate? Like something's happening. It's not your fucking business.
Well, and in this day and age too, and I was a big People magazine person.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what celebrities are doing now.
No,
I don't have that was something I did when I was a teenager and in my 20s.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I could care less what the Kardashians are doing or not doing.
Right. I know. It's crazy.
But we're weird.
And maybe we're just dumb Americans too, with our right to privacy is enshrined in the 4th Amendment of our Constitution. It's in the Bill of Rights. And so to me, a lot of this seems fucking bonkers. And so I talked about poor Kate Middleton and the stuff that she's going through currently. Mm-hmm. And I think about Princess Diana, whom we loved. This is from a Vogue article, and I thought this was really both sad and fascinating. The police issued their findings as part of a British court inquest, and this is Dodi Fayed's dad. Mm-hmm. Basically was saying, he was saying this was an inside job. The monarchy couldn't conceive of an Egyptian man being the stepdad to Princes. And so there was this massive inquest between 2007 and 2008. And the jury was like, no, Fayed family, that's not what happened. But this is what happened. The jury concluded that Diana died unlawfully due to the grossly negligent driving of the following vehicles: the paparazzi and the Mercedes driver, Henry Paul.
Who was drunk.
And I don't believe Di or Dodi were wearing seatbelts. No. That's what I read. So, but still, had they not been chased by the paparazzi, would that even have been a factor? I don't know.
Well, and this is where I stopped watching The Crown, because they basically make it look like the Al-Fayed family caused it, was my interpretation.
Interesting. So this is also from that inquest. So at 12:20 a.m., the two being Di and Dodi, left the Ritz Paris with the intention of returning to the Rue Arsène
Huissy.
Thank you. Apartment.
French and I can't even say it.
They left via the rear exit in the Rue Cambon. Philip, thank you, waited in a car in front of the main entrance, which had attracted a sizable crowd, of course. Mm-hmm. Instead, driver Henry Paul escorted the couple into the Mercedes. I don't think he was planning on driving that night.
No, he wasn't.
He was they escaped through the rear because they're like, there's too much heat out here. And so this guy found himself in a situation where he was driving. He definitely shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Here you go. So neither were wearing their seatbelts, as they said. Once the paparazzi realized that the couple had left by the rear exit, they were quickly in pursuit. Mm-hmm. Indeed, a small number of the paparazzi had been covering the rear exit in any event. Paul crashed his car into a pillar while driving above the speed limit in the Pont de Alma underpass, killing himself and Dodi Fayed at the scene. And we know Diana died at the hospital. Mm-hmm. Awful.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah. I do too.
Crying.
I do too.
We were in tears.
It was
My
insane.
mom was so upset.
It was really sad. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so yeah, multiple folks are at fault here. But like I said, I don't think this would have happened if the couple had not been incessantly hounded and chased by the press.
Well, because of their personal lives.
Yeah.
And that was always the thing. And that would, it's like the double-edged sword where you're famous because people are interested in you.
Yeah.
But I think it's weird. Like when I see someone that's famous, like I don't bother them.
No, I don't want to.
I don't want to bother them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just it's such a weird thing to be. People were spying on them.
Yeah.
And hounding them and hounding their children.
Yeah. Yep, that's the part that bothers me as well. The kids. Well, these are kids.
I remember, was it Saturday Night Live made fun of Chelsea Clinton?
Yes, I was so pissed.
And Hillary was like, hey, me and her dad signed up for this.
Yeah.
You can make fun of us all day long.
About her being
We're adults.
ugly?
Yes.
She's fucking 10.
I know.
Like, come on, man.
Right? And that's the thing where it's like, I don't think you may be part of this family, but the older the generations in this time went on, I don't think that's not your choice then if you're being told.
No.
And you have no skills.
Yeah, it's awful. And I know that, and of course, the paparazzi who's making, their salary, their money off of trailing these people incessantly, they don't think about this. But Carolyn, we know there's a psychological impact of constantly being monitored and scrutinized. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, and I'm gonna even go more meta. There's a mental health initiative when you are that person who's constantly scrutinizing. Because yes, the paparazzi people are only going to give them money if it's worth to sell.
Right.
So, I fucking hate TMZ and all that shit. Leave people alone. Yeah. But absolutely, Jen, there's a 2018 Vice article, Motherboard by Kaylee Rogers. Technology and machines are in our lives, tracking us and surveilling us. AI data is being scrapped from human interactions with computers all the time. We know it's there, or do you know it's there? We don't really realize it. So I'm taking I'm going to take a little side road here, but
okay.
I swear
I'm
it's
going
going somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. So how on edge are we, though, when we're reminded that there's a data breach? Uh-huh. Like, I got one of those today where it said...
Me too.
Did you?
Password.
Yeah, my password. And then, I'm not even kidding you, it said, go change that password. And I looked and I had it was like over 50 different data breaches for apps where it was like, you have to... And I was like, I don't even care.
Take my identity.
Like,
take my shitty credit score.
Exactly.
Take my
debt loans. Yeah. Well, and so I kind of had this moment where I was temporarily vigilant.
Yeah.
And then I did exactly what this article says, where I went, well, it's too much. And I don't have the time to change these. I don't even have some of these things anymore. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is an impact on our brains, not just of this constant surveillance. It does change our mood and our behavior, and also of being vigilantly observing all these things all the time. It's not healthy on both ends. It's not good for the person being surveilled, and it's really not good for the people who are constantly looking at this. So if you're dealing with any fear and uncertainty, yes, being watched creates anxiety, depression, PTSD. And this I thought was a very good way of explaining this. A baby rat being watched by its mom feels comfort, but when it's being watched by a predator, it feels fear. Doesn't that perfectly sum that up? So obviously when we're being watched, if we've given consent or there's a trade-off. Yeah. So case in point from this article, they say Netflix tracks us and has the algorithm that will show us more things we like. Now, I'm pretty eclectic, so I'm like, there's no way you can figure me out.
I'm a bitch.
Netflix does.
Yeah. And our phones, how often have you and I been having a conversation about something, and the next thing we know, Facebook is sending us targeted ads.
But I think that's how you got that velvet blazer.
It is. And it's a trade-off. I'm like, dumpy clothes, and then all of a sudden I'm getting ads for dumpy clothes, and my whole wardrobe is dumpy as is reflective of fashion these days. But there's that trade-off, right? I think we know, hey, okay, we're being surveilled to an extent, but it feels relatively harmless. Yeah, benign. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the difference with the royal family, with a lot of celebrities. Part of it was you got attention and you boosted morale, your popularity went up, and that probably felt good. And someone like Diana, that was the public loved her. And that was, in many times, her fans are what saved her from very, very detrimental effects of the royal family on her. And so, yes, again, no qualms about being watched as harmful. Don't worry, consensual voyeur community. I see you.
Yeah.
Like, if you like that, cool.
Yeah.
You're of age.
Yeah.
Cool. But that's not what we're talking about.
No.
When you target, so now here's where I'm going to get a little off track, but also on track. When you target a specific group and gather data and history repeating itself, now we're talking about problems, right? So think about how, in Nazi Germany, there were spies and there were maybe phone taps, things like that, right? And now as a society, governments actually sanction surveillance as part of homeland security, Jen.
Right.
And the impact on targeted races, ethnicities is real and it's fucked up.
Yep.
And there's a wonderful film. I actually did end up watching this. You sent me this article. If you can, it's on AMC. It's The Feeling of Being Watched. Filmmaker, I'm sorry, that's not the name. Yes, it is. The Feeling of Being Watched. Filmmaker and journalist Asia Bundui, I hope I said her name right, uncovers tens and thousands of pages of FBI documents that prove her hometown was the subject of one of the largest counterterrorism investigations ever conducted in the United States before 9/11.
Wow.
Codenamed Operation Vulgar Betrayal.
Holy shit.
So
was this a Muslim community?
Yes.
Okay.
Go figure.
Was it Michigan?
I think it was Chicago.
Okay.
I believe it was Chicago. It's a suburb of Chicago.
Okay.
So with unprecedented access, The Feeling of Being Watched, this is from her article, weaves the personal and political as it follows the filmmaker's examination of why her community, including her own family, fell under the blanket of government surveillance. And so we know that there's a psychological impact. She has her website's beautiful, but they do a whole section on the psychological impact of discrimination and surveillance. And they talk about, I'm getting choked up now, like they just talk about how violating and horrifying that is to have your own life turned against you.
Yeah.
And I think this is where I do feel like there is speculation on the royal family. Did they surveil? Diana felt her phone was being tapped for the longest time.
Yeah.
She was certain of that.
Yeah.
And, again, in American culture, the leap I'm taking is this is often the technology of white supremacy.
Sure.
And along with policing, incarceration, surveillance is a tool that's used to defy whiteness and
define whiteness.
Yeah. Sorry, I wrote that wrong. And demonize non-white people. And I think within the royal family, certainly that's what we see with Meghan Markle. It's just fucking racist.
Yeah.
But you saw that with Diana as well, where, once you're not one of us, you're an outsider.
Right.
And that's a very dangerous thing to see in humanity. When you're going to name any group or any individual as an outsider, that frightens me.
And you have the power to take away their power and to turn public opinion against them. Yep. That's really scary. And I also think, so many of us every day walk through life and we're like, whatever, we're being surveilled, like not a big deal. Like there's cameras everywhere, like government can access our information. But I often think about people who are either unfairly accused or convicted of a crime that they didn't commit. And they're like, I never in a million years thought that I would be in this position. I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Yes.
And then to have, police and whatever, district attorneys, whatever, just turn against you and point the finger and say, it's you, it's you, it's you. It's unbelievable. It's like, I never thought this could happen to me. Yeah. And so I think a lot of us just kind of, I wouldn't call it ignorance necessarily, but there's a lot of trust that goes into us, right? We're trusting the legal entities to use this information or not even care about the information. I'm like, I'm nobody, who cares?
Well, and that's also the luxury of, I think, being privileged and being Caucasian. So you don't have, you've not lived a life, we've not lived a life. Well, I haven't lived a life, I can't speak for you, but I haven't lived a life where I have to worry about that.
No. I can walk into a store where I can't afford anything in that store, and no one who works at that store is going to follow me around and assume that I'm there to steal, which has happened to my stepdad.
Yes.
He's had the experience of walking into a bank to cash his paycheck when he was like one of the head accountants for a sugar company, and the person behind the counter calling a white man, and the white man's like, that's my boss, cash his check. You know, like I haven't experienced that. And yes, we have the luxury of not having gone through these things, which are like a more minute, well, maybe not, because they're part of a bigger systemic process when we're talking about racism, but that is part of surveillance and monitoring.
Yes.
And we know at least about the trauma and what is, I think, the public health crisis that is systemic racism.
Yes.
So anyway.
Well, and so but within that, it's the two sides of it, right? It's absolutely unhealthy to be absorbing that much media.
Yep.
And that's the thing. People are only going to offer it if people want to buy it.
Yes.
So I'd rather see, what was it like during the pandemic when what's his face, John Krasinski, had us like the good news show.
Oh yeah.
Didn't last so long, did it?
I know. And my husband always says, my husband who taught econ for a semester, the consumer has all the power.
We do.
And he's absolutely right.
We do, but
it's true.
We just don't think we do.
No, but we have a lot of power, guys. So final thought, it's time to wrap this up. We've raged for long enough. You know, love them or hate them, or like me, feel a sense of pretty much complete and total disinterest, even though I'm pretty passionate about some of the things associated with the family. The royal family continues to be an antiquated object of fascination. While there are still a lot of countries that have royals, the British family seems to be watched by the world. This seems to be an interesting time for the royal family with the extremely public departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who cited racism as one of the primary contributing factors for their piecing out of the royal family. We are always in the learn from your mistake and do better corner. Will the royal family choose to do better than what... I'm sorry, I lost my place. Will the royal family choose to do better than what we expect given their colonial past and seemingly racist present? Or, like the institution itself, will this monarchy cling to egregious and antiquated beliefs about who is worthy and who is not? We don't know what the future is going to be, but we can be sure of one thing. The media will definitely keep us informed. They're always watching. They're not watching us, so we've got nothing interesting going on. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed this. We hope you follow us on TikTok. We think we put out some funny shit.
Yeah.
Follow us on Instagram. Yeah. It's all The World According to Jen and Carolyn. We're easy to find.
We're happy to be looked at on social media.
Yeah,
or if you see me out in public, say hello.
Hello.
Please don't stalk us.
No, don't stalk us. Yeah, I know. Whenever we're making videos upstairs and you can see my street and cross street in the background, I'm like, oh, we got to do that again. Like you never know, man. There's some creepy motherfuckers out there. You never know who's watching you. And we'll leave you with that.
Like that. Good ending.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a spot of tea.
Cheerio. Fuck off. Piss off. All right. How long was that rant?
Are you done?